Hey, Cross Park, good Friday afternoon to you. Today's leadership update is a little bit different and probably a little bit longer than some of them, so I'm just giving you a heads up about that. And it is designed to give you some broad background thoughts before our sermon series on Ephesians, which we're starting Sunday morning. You know, as American culture has changed, there's been a rise of the nuns, not angry Catholic women, but people who have no belief, that they check the none category when they're asked what kind of religion they are. And so, as there are fewer people that are participating in organized public religion in America, lots of other ideas and philosophies have moved in to fill that vacuum. Some of those are political ideas and philosophies. So, I want to talk today briefly about how some of these political things can ensnare us in ways that aren't healthy. Now, political ideologies, whether they're normal or crackpot, tend to offer solutions, as they ought to, for what is wrong in the world. It's not too hard to get people's attention if you say, hey, things aren't going as well as they should. It seems like it might all fall apart. We need some solutions. Now, for Christians, we have to be really wise about how we handle those solutions. Politics of all sorts can become substitute faiths for people, and we do not want that to be the case for us at Cross Park. There's lots of Christian language and rhetoric used in American politics, and so we want to be wise about how we engage politics as Christians. So there's a couple things I want to say. As we reflect on our current national moment, there are lots of different things we could say. This is not about who you vote for, or I'm never going to say you ought to vote for this person or you can't vote for that person. I don't actually believe that's the way we ought to go. The two extremes are to merge faith and politics entirely, or to pretend like none of it exists and never, ever mention any of it. And you show up at a church and it seems like it's an ahistorical group of people that could live anywhere at any time. I think we're trying to find some other way to walk, and that's what I'm talking about today. I mentioned 2 weeks ago in my video my concerns about the riot, the events of January 6th that happened at the Capitol. Now, I know some people will look at that event and say, listen, a lot of those people didn't participate in violence, and clearly everyone in that crowd didn't all think and believe the exact same things. I'm sure that both of those things are true. Not everyone participated in the same way, and there is not a monolithic set of beliefs or worldviews that were in that crowd. But I will argue that the worldviews that ultimately won the day, for at least the people that actually stormed the Capitol, were in fact worldviews, and that those worldviews were not particularly Christian, that they were in some ways competing worldviews. And so we want to talk about how, as Christians, we can think about and engage politics, not in the specific details of giving you voting instructions or voter guides, but speaking more broadly. There are lots of things we could talk about. I'm simply going to speak about three possible dangers. The first one is simply politics as faith. That we don't actually believe in anything transcendent, but that we use maybe religious language to talk about our political commitments. Alexander Solzhenitsyn noticed the possibility for this, particularly among Western democracies, where he said the danger is that democracy is a surrogate faith for intellectuals deprived of religion. So when we don't have religion, sometimes we can choose any form of politics and make it a substitute faith. We certainly don't want to do that. The second concern is more specifically for our kind of community. There are all sorts of combinations of faith and politics, some of them more healthy, some of them less so. The history of America is rife in good and bad ways with faith informing politics. And so we want the way faith informs our cultural and political engagement to be healthier and more positive rather than less so. There is also a history in America of what's called civil religion. Civil religion sometimes is seen as sort of a middle way between religious nationalism and secular politics that says there's no room for any kind of faith or religious commitment in the public sphere. And so civil religion tends to be sort of a vague collection of beliefs, things that we can find that unite us as Americans, common ground, and some of them are more explicitly religious and some of them are more explicitly secular. That kind of blending of faith and politics can be healthier There can be better or worse versions of civil religion. In the evangelical world, which is where we are situated in some sense, there is often an unhealthy combination of faith and politics that goes beyond common ground, finding common ground, or promoting legitimate righteousness in politics. It often goes beyond that to something that can be syncretistic. Syncretism is a term for religious beliefs that should not go together because they're contradictory. They actually don't work together at all, and yet they have been smushed together. And what we sometimes see is a syncretistic blend of faith and politics. One possible version of that is the Jericho March from December in DC. Now, I wasn't there. I've read several reports from there, but the one that was the most interesting was a commentator that I read often. His name is Rod Dreher. I don't agree with everything Rod says, but Rod is very conservative politically, and he is a public Christian. He is an Orthodox Christian, capital O Orthodox. So conservative Christian, not a non-religious secular hater. And yet here was his evaluation. He spent the day watching all 6 hours of the festivities there in DC, and here was his evaluation. He said, I saw a divinizing of MAGA and Stop the Steal that is going to tear churches to bits and drive people away from the Christian faith or keep them from coming in the first place. Based on what I saw today, the Christians in this movement do not doubt that Trump is God's chosen, that they, by following him, are walking in the light, and that whatever they do to serve Trump is also serving God. Now, I do and have done a lot of reading and thinking on this. I'm sure a lot of you have as well. This is actually a common concern among Christian commentators in America, that there is a dangerous mix between certain kinds of American nationalism. You take that and you add to it a certain kind of spiritual commentary. Things like this is God's fight, or America is God's chosen nation. And you add to that a sense of eschatological urgency, that it's all going to fall apart. But if we just do this, whatever this is, if we just follow this candidate, this political party, then we will keep the bad stuff from happening. And in fact, we will bring, in one sense, the kingdom to pass in America. That is an incredibly potent potion, and it's also very dangerous. And it's easy to believe it because many of the people involved in this are saying, this is God's way, this is God's fight, this is what God has for us. And in many cases, they say, God told me that this is what we should be doing. Also, these things attempt to explain why things are so bad and offer hope. And again, we don't want to be people who think our only hope, the only living out of the Christian life is all only in the next world. Of course, we want our faith to be lived out now. And yet, as I said, there's a dangerous overlap here. Anytime people speak of some sort of coming utopia because of their political ideas, you should be very wary. And anytime someone says God told them something, I would immediately ask them for chapter and verse, because I don't actually know that God told them what they think God told them. Bottom line is, when our faith merges with our political commitment, it can be very easy for them to be the same thing, or even for our political commitment to exceed our faith commitment. And that is dangerous idolatry you want to avoid. Let me give you a third brief version of this. And I say it goes way beyond even what I just said, is the current phenomenon of QAnon. Now, some of you are certainly familiar with this. It's been on the news a lot. If you are not familiar with QAnon, it is this movement, sort of a political movement. I would even argue a worldview in American politics right now. And it is admittedly bizarre. Even as I explain it to you, some of you will think, well, that can't be true. QAnon is a conspiracy theory that a powerful cabal of child-sacrificing, Satan-worshiping pedophiles actually run the US government and many world governments, and that Donald Trump was God's chosen instrument to push back on and destroy that reality. I know that if you haven't read any of this, that may sound like I'm making this up. I'm not making it up at all. This is a real concern. QAnon is, in a sense, a series of ideas, prophecies, if you will, that are put out on these certain message boards. I don't think technically they're message boards, but there's something like that. And I haven't gone all the way to these message boards, but I've read lots of analyses from right and left about QAnon. And really, it's an alternate worldview that these prophecies are authoritative. They're very vague. These things don't come true. But when they don't come true, see, it's just a proof that this powerful cabal is so powerful that they've been able to get around the predictions that QAnon has made. In this world, not only is Q and his or her predictions authoritative, like Scripture, Donald Trump is an almost messianic figure. He's some kind of political or cultural savior. What this really is a form of Gnosticism, which was an ancient religion, sometimes even merged with Christianity to be a heresy, where there's secret knowledge. And this secret knowledge is not accessible to everyone. You have to hear and believe the truth of the Scriptures, the QAnon, the special knowledge. And if you will believe the special information, then you'll really know it. And we know it sounds crazy, but once you're in, and you'll really know it and understand it. And that is Gnosticism. It's a form of Gnosticism, which appeals deeply to our desire to be in the inner circle, to know the knowledge that nobody else has. And again, it's an attempt to explain why everything's falling apart. And it can be very powerful in that sense. However, it is a fantasy, it is a heresy, and it is a worldview that is not Christian. And so we must reject it. Now, some of you at this point are thinking, okay, great. What about the real problems out there? And let me say, there are lots of real problems. Even politically, some of you will say, listen, on the left or in the progressive world, there are ideas out there that are very dangerous, that explicitly deny God, that deny God's created reality and his goodness. And to all that, I would say, you're absolutely right. And I agree. These things are problematic, and much of the mixing, the unhealthy mixing of faith and politics in American Christianity, is a reaction to some of the things that are going on out there. However, as the church, we do not want to primarily identify ourselves based on what we're against. We want to be about the kingdom of God. We want to be for what we are for. Really, in my evaluation, both political extremes are defined largely by what they're against rather than what they are for. And remember, just because a group of people say they're doing something in Jesus' name, they pray, they use Jesus' language, they, in some cases even blow the shofar, whatever religious trappings and whatever sincerity people may have, that does not mean it's the same thing as doing what God would actually have them do. Now listen, I have real concerns about various aspects of where our culture is going. I think they're real, and I think they are very fair. And many of them are related to changing mores on morals, spiritual realities, and a lot of them are related to particular ideologies in the progressive world. There are always going to be these challenges to our faith, and more are coming. But the confused and unhealthy mixing of faith and politics isn't the answer. Now listen, I don't know all the answers to how to handle our cultural moment and how to interact with all the different political options. Again, I'm never going to tell you how to vote or who to vote for. That's never been what we've been about. I believe Christians can take all sorts of perspectives on who to vote for, how to vote, different ways that they think legitimately are the best way to promote the common good for our neighbors. The goal here is not to convince you to be a political moderate, by the way, either. Not at all. Though if you're a moderate, that's fine too. The goal here rather is to convince you that as Christians and here at Crosspark, what is to animate us, what is to drive us, what is to make us most impassioned ought to be the kingdom of God and the moving forward of God's kingdom through his church. That is the truest and best thing. That's what matters more than even political solutions. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying politics don't matter. I'm not saying that the policies that are implemented in our communities don't matter. Of course they matter. I'm also not anti-America, by the way. I believe the American experiment in democracy is a good thing, despite all its difficulties. And I believe that because of the attempts to create a healthy democracy, that America has been able to be a force for good in different ways in the world. So the history of America is full of lots of commendable things. And it's also full of all sorts of terrible things, rank hypocrisy, all sorts of contradictions and problems, just like everywhere else. So the answer is not simply to be pro-America. I think it's a good thing to be a patriot, and part of the way to be a patriot is also to be a critic. I think it's important to remember that the Bible in no way requires democracy or American-style freedom of religion, which I think is a good thing, by the way. But it doesn't require that to live out your faith. And most Christians in the history of the world have not lived in this setting, and they've still been able to be Christians. I also want to remind you that America is ultimately a footnote in history. And by the way, that is a cause for celebration. America is a good thing, but it's a footnote in the history of the world. And ultimately, when the kingdom comes, all the little details will be seen for what they really are. Listen, I lived in a communist country, and I've seen lots of the terrible things that can be brought about in that setting. Actually, one of the things that the Communist Party hates about Christianity in China is that Christianity is a larger, better, truer set of truths beyond the state's ideology. And so no matter how cooperative Christian citizens are, no matter how much they might even love their country, that it's just true that they believe something truer, larger, and better than the ideology of the state. We too, obviously, as Christians in America, we have a truer, larger, better set of truths than any political ideology. So the danger we want to avoid is arguing that my particular political ideology, which so often, right, is a product of the moment anyways, my particular candidate, my particular movement, that this is the only way for Christians to think about politics, whether that is a moderate way or an extreme right or an extreme left, if it's some radical gender ideology, if it's white nationalism, if it's QAnon, if it's extreme identity politics. There's all sorts of problems. And if you think this is the only way to think and function, particularly as a Christian, and anyone who doesn't think this way, they're the problem, they're an enemy. In fact, they may even be an unwitting minion of Satan. That can be very dangerous and very toxic. That kind of unhealthy overmixing of faith and politics often veers into false prophecy because we speak more than we should about what we know, and the Bible has very strong comments about that. Now, this problem, particularly along with all the other cultural problems that we face, can be corrected by a clear, strong understanding of what God's actually up to and what we are to be. And that's why we're starting the book of Ephesians this week. We're getting clarity on what God is doing in the world and what we are to be as the church. Listen, we are not going to all agree on the political particulars. I don't expect us to. You may think my evaluation on this video is crackpot as well. That's fine too. I'm simply saying that we have to agree that Jesus' vision for the church is so much bigger and better than any other earthly or political ideology we could come up with. And it's Jesus' vision for the church that must cause us to live faithfully in the world, regardless of our political involvement. Now, come join us Sunday morning in the parking lot if you can. It looks like it's going to be above 40 degrees at 11 a.m., so that's sort of our cutoff. So we are planning to meet at 11 a.m. Sunday morning unless we tell you otherwise. Bundle up. It'll be chilly. I want to thank you for last week with the increased restrictions and rules here in Mecklenburg County. I really appreciate the way that you bundled up and masked up. That was really good. Thank you for respecting the distance. I know we all feel different ways. I'm so tired of mask wearing. I'm tired of social distancing just like you are. But thank you for taking that seriously to respect your neighbors. Finally, I want to ask you to pray for us at Cross Park, all of us, that we will continue, as we're in the book of Ephesians, to figure out, to seek, how do we bring our whole lives under the lordship of Jesus Christ in every area, and pray that God will continue to make us effective in being the church and promoting his mission in the world. Thanks, Cross Park. I'll see you Sunday morning.